Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. And I'm pretty sure my camera has, for some reason, done this. Whatever. Right. Anyway, I hope you're all having a good day. And today I'm going to be doing an AMA for animal rights advocates. So this should be interesting. I'm also going to play Balloons Tower Defense because I'm just popping bad arguments one by one. Anyway. But yeah, we're just going to have a nice chill and a Q&A session. Should be pretty interesting. Yeah. And yes, I am a vegan, in case you were wondering. 100%. Quality assured. Right. So, I'm going to jump into the AMA now. So, right. Hello, everyone, and welcome and that to is me coming through. I don't want that to happen. Stop it. Stop it, Lewis. Right. Cool. Right. My God, where am I? Oh, that didn't sound good. Right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear us okay?
Hello, let's ready? We can start.
Yeah, I'm ready. 1 second, I'll just.
Okay. Yeah, so the stage is right below. It's can you see it? Or you can see on the top, listen in.
Wait a minute. I've totally lost myself. I don't know where I am anymore. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you see the server?
I can see listen in.
Yeah, click on it.
Sweet.
Animal agriculture. Right. I see that there is something.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out is that while you'll see even within vegans we may disagree on like small scenarios or some different things, we generally have a shared set of core beliefs. Okay, PP is up here. I'll get down.
Oh, you don't have to do that. It's cool, man.
No, it's okay. Maybe you want to feel. I don't want to leave you feeling alone. I'll let Dantas handle it. All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My Discord just completely bugged. Okay. Are we ready to start?
Yes. As ready as I'll ever be.
Cool. Yeah, so could we actually start off with just if you could introduce yourself? That'd be great.
So my name is Lewis. I'm studying a PhD in philosophy. I'm primarily writing on animal ethics, veganism specifically, as I would argue that it's the only way ethically to be in our society. I'd say it's the ethical progression of our concept of equality, if that gives you any indication of where my PhD is heading. I'm a Hegelian, so that means I argue for a progressive notion of ethics through history. So yeah.
I hope, for some reason my Discord's burning out. I hope you can hear me clearly. So to everyone here in the audience, we're gonna bring people to the stage, to the podium, and everyone can ask their questions to Perspective Philosophy. Animal rights and veganism philosophy is welcome. And just request to join the podium. There's a little option at the bottom for you to request so that you can join the stage and ask questions to Perspective Philosophy. I guess I'll start off with my first question. So just to start it off, and then we'll go from there.
Well, sorry, continue.
Sorry?
No, I was just going to say.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just sharing the link for the server. It's cool.
So I already mentioned it to you, but basically I'm not sure who made this argument, but there's an argument made against protesting at slaughterhouses because it could potentially, or does, prolong the suffering of pigs that are there. I was wondering what you think about that argument, or what your moral evaluation is of that situation. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's more of a complex scenario. The reality of the situation is, how much control do we have over the amount of suffering that is actually being perpetuated against the pigs, given the protest, and then how much good is done. I think you're looking at it at a utilitarian point of view would be nigh on impossible. Like trying to weigh up how much suffering is being perpetuated onto a group of pigs who are kept in a hot, steamy environment for an extra, let's say, 45 minutes an hour, whatever it is, versus the amount of good done by the protest. Now, if I'm honest, I think that protesting outside of slaughterhouses is well-intentioned, but doesn't really do any major good in terms of consequences. I think that the amount of like unless it was like en masse protesting where I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people are stopping slaughterhouses all over the world. All we're doing is really decentralizing production in one area or a few areas and incentivizing it in another. So, for example, veganism, from what I'm aware, isn't very widespread in terms of the developing world. Now, if we were to, let's say, like economically, if we undermine production, like we undermine the supply chain within the developed world because we're vegan and we've managed to attack the supply chain here, then all that really happens is that it's exported to the developing world, which may end up producing worse circumstances for animals as well. So in terms of whether it actually does good to damage the supply chain directly, I'm honestly highly skeptical. I don't think that we are necessarily going to make any difference if we attack supply. Like, I could burn down farms and it wouldn't make any real difference because somebody else will make a farm, somebody else will fill that demand, they'll supply that demand. And that's just the way capitalism really works. Now, if on the other hand I convince people through protest to go vegan, let's say like the protests are successful in the sense that they get publicity, they spread the vegan message, then that's a big difference. So overall, do I think that protesting outside of slaughterhouses is ethical because of it, or unethical? I think that looking at it in terms of the harm done to pigs in this scenario versus the benefit to pigs is obviously kind of, or whatever animal it is kind of what we'll have to do. The calculation for that, I think, is beyond our scope. And I think that for that reason, I would just recommend performing a different form of activism. I think that the best forms of activism are ones that change consumer demand, like can change the demand side of the system rather than the supply. I think that supply, the only thing that we could do that would genuinely affect the supply chain, that would lower production, would be remove subsidization. Any protesting outside of slaughterhouses isn't really going to do anything. It just seems a bit fruitless. Like, whether it's doing additional harm, I'm not sure, because you're keeping them in a hot container, but also they're about to go and get executed. So there is no real, if I'm honest, I don't really think that the vegans are responsible for the harm done to the pigs in this scenario, or the prolonged harm. I just think that it's a fruitless endeavor. I don't think that there's no real advantage to it other than gaining footage, for example, to show the wider public. So, for example, if you've got drones and you can show, the piles of corpses and body parts and, things like that, or let's say you're an undercover, you're doing an undercover expose for like an animal rights organization, then yeah, that's totally different. But it doesn't really do any good. Even when vegans are martyred, it seems it doesn't even do that good. There was that woman who was killed in Canada, who was run over by a lorry, one of the slaughterhouse trucks, and it didn't seem to really even create that much of a difference. And I thought that would, anthropocentric ethics should have at least protected that individual. But I think people hate vegans this much; they just portrayed her as being a crazy vegan stood on a road, when in reality she was basically murdered. From what I'm aware, like the truck had line of sight; they could see her. They just plowed into her and dragged her body for like 20 yards, and yet very little was done, from what I'm aware. So even when the most emotive thing that could possibly happen at a protest happens, it doesn't seem to get publicity. It doesn't seem to make a real difference. I think if we're going to be political, we've got to think about trying to change the laws around subsidization. We've got to think about trying to really make our advocacy the most efficient way possible, rather than essentially the most emotive way possible. It might be nice to say goodbye to the pigs, but you're not really saving as many pigs as if you went and did something else.
Right. So, I don't know. There are a lot of interesting arguments around it, and thank you for that perspective. Okay, so I'll go from the stage. Basically, there was one thing I forgot to mention was if you could prioritize the people that have a colored name, because people that have joined the server, and yeah, you can click on people and they can then join the stage. So just go from top to down, I guess,
Right.
in
So
order.
by colored
Thank you.
name, do you mean like because
Yeah,
everyone?
just not the white color names. Just we'll prioritize anyone that's in the
Ah,
server.
okay, cool.
Alright,
Right, right.
thank you.
Super dude. Hello. How you doing, man?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. You got a question for us?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go for it, man.
Where do veganism morals come into play with cutting the grass? Because that could potentially destroy habitat. Sorry.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. To be entirely honest with you, I think there is an argument to be made there. I think that in terms of the consideration of animals, things like cutting the grass genuinely can have a considerable impact on habitats, as you say. Like people say if you want to find a new species, go look in your garden. That's how diverse like insect life is in your garden. The reality of the situation is that there is it depends on the ethics that are being imposed. If an individual, I mean, I'm a Hegelian, so I'm going to argue for a deontological approach to ethics. Some people take a utilitarian approach. A utilitarian approach would see it as, let's say, the amount of suffering being perpetuated upon the insect life versus the amount of benefit that happens from cutting the grass. And so cutting the grass, I think, would pretty much probably get ruled out very quickly from a utilitarian perspective. Although it might sound ridiculous, it just seems that that the amount of harm being perpetuated on sentient beings would overall be a much greater degree than the amount of benefit that an individual experiences from having a freshly mowed lawn, That being said, if there is some, like, it depends on what grass it is. There's obviously, like, if it's like something, an important pass, like, or something like that, or it's, like it's a place where people like need to go, then maybe it depends on like how would it affect other people's lives. Now, from a deontological perspective, you can argue what's called the rule of double effect. So if you're trying to help someone, but it creates harm at the same time, let's take something like abortion, you basically you aren't liable for the harm produced in the same way as you would be if you were directly trying to produce that harm, because intentionality is of vital importance. Now, obviously, knowing that you are going to produce that harm means that you have to weigh up whether your responsibility or your duty is towards having, the fresh mowed lawn and the individuals that would benefit, or the animals who are being considered. Now, what I would say is, like, the reality of the situation is, and this is probably like veganism level 200. The reality is that, yeah, freshly cut grass is probably not worth it. What would make more sense is really, like, and this is probably like even worse, is if you were going to have something like that, you would prevent, if let's say it needed to be an access, like a roadway or something like that, just destroy the habitat once rather than letting it redevelop and then destroy it again and then develop and then destroy it again. The amount of harm that's being done and the amount of disregard, whether it's a utilitarian perspective or whether it's a deontological perspective, you either are disregarding the interests of that animal over and over again, or you are you're causing a greater amount of suffering to a greater amount of beings. So I would say ultimately replace the grass if it needs to be with something like AstroTurf or something, and just stop the cycle of suffering. I guess that would be the only thing I could say. I guess if it's unnecessary, it also gets really complex, if I'm honest, because people even argue that industrialization or like human, like, so some utilitarians take the position that nature is essentially the world's largest slaughterhouse. It is full of suffering and death and horrible things, and it kind of is. If you look at it, if you take an objective look at nature, it's a pretty vicious, horrible place. Animals don't really have a good time in nature. They just sort of get wrecked all over the place. So there's some vegans who argue that we should really destroy as much of nature as possible. I'm pretty sure Humane Hancock takes that view. I wouldn't necessarily go that far. I think that we should try to minimize the disrespect of sentient beings. In this case, either let the grass grow and not intervene, or intervene once, and prevent it from continuing to, sustain life and to be slaughtered en masse every year. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Am I allowed to ask another question?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah, go for it, man.
What would happen to the economy if the whole world was to go vegan, like particularly in LEDC countries?
To be entirely honest, I don't think that there would be very much happen to the economy. It would be the same thing as, I mean, it would change, obviously. Supply and demand changes all the time. Obviously, animal agriculture is a pretty big business, but people are still going to need to be fed. People are still going to buy products. The economy will just shift in terms of production. Like, the production of animal products will shift to production of vegan products. It's very rare that you find, people thought that they were going to have these problems with automation, that automation was going to cause a collapse in jobs, and it never happened. They've been predicting that for a long time. It never really happened. Jobs seem to just get produced elsewhere, in new industries. So if I'm honest, I'm not really worried that veganism would damage the economy. I think that economically veganism could be a great benefit in terms of having an industry that isn't so one, I think that it increases market socialist ethics, if you will, ethical consumerism, which I think is a really advantageous for how we would engage in an economics in a more sustainable way, rather than having a system which is based on, consumption regardless of the harm done. It's now ethical consumption, and I think that if we're going to have any capitalist or market socialist society, it would require that enlightenment of the population to sustain itself. Otherwise, we're going to head towards some sort of self-destruction, like climate change and so on. And that's not even considering the animals that are being slaughtered. Then on top of that, I think that the advances in certain technologies to replace, because people are trying to find substitutes, and this is one of the things in economics. The elasticity of demand is really the elasticity of demand is really tied to whether people can substitute products alike at a certain cost, at a certain price mark. So let's say it costs, I don't know how much mince or anything costs actually. So let's say it costs, I don't know, like £2.50 for like 500 grams of mince. If you're the amount of elasticity for that product would be, if you were to change the price mark like up or down 10%, what would the demand? How much would the demand change? If it goes up 10%, does it directly correspond to that? Does it go down 10%? I doubt it, but some people, like, it might even so it might reduce by, let's say, 2%, and if, like, as you go up and up, it might fall off a cliff at like £5 or something like that. Now, that's all as well tied to other products individuals can buy within that market. So if it goes up by 10% and that 10% makes it at the same price as a vegan substitute, people mightn't swap over. But if it goes up by, let's say, 30%, 40%, 50%, then people will be more willing to swap to the substitutes. And it's the same thing with if vegan substitutes diminish in price. So as this technology becomes more readily available and more widespread, you'll find that new jobs will pop up, that the elasticity of meat will diminish. Like, the price of meat will have to try and compete with the price of vegan goods, and that'll massively change the marketplace in terms of how suppliers are paying, in terms of wages, of how how much subsidies are given, and so on. So in terms of the economics of this, it's to be honest, it's incredibly intricate. I couldn't predict how an overall economic shift would happen, like the absolute outcome. But yeah. So you said I thought you were going to say something. Sorry, that's why I stopped.
All right. Thank you for your question. Next person.
Hello.
Oh,
Runtas.
hello. Hey. All right. Yeah, my question is, how important is it to sort of figure out whether ethics is objective or subjective when discussing veganism? I guess it's kind of a two-part question, because I'm also curious about how you get to a sort of objective morality, because I haven't really understood when I have tried to figure it out from your videos and so on. So if you could just explain that, like I'm 5 years old.
That's good. Like I'm 5. Okay, oh, great. Well, yeah, like, so I would think it's vitally important, to be entirely honest with you. I think that some people argue that you can just take a normative perspective and argue for veganism, you know, run marginal cases, and, you know, people will go, oh, well, like, my values mean that we shouldn't kill animals. That, like, well, not really. What I've found is that people are unbelievably selfish in our society. I think that egoism is rife and that people are very self-interested. And to be honest, that's what most economists actually use to gauge, you know, how people behave, is the self-interested. And they take everyone as a self-interested agent trying to fulfill their own ends. And then there's, you know, an invisible hand which governs the market. Now, do I think that if we take that position, even if we take the position of an egoism, everyone's trying to fulfill their own ends. Excuse me. The socio-political environment and how people's values are formed overall leads people towards having very similar values. People usually believe in a right and wrong. They don't necessarily know anything about ethics at all. They just sort of like, you know, it's wrong to hit your sister. It's you know, it's wrong to steal. But, you know, that becomes more and more skewed depending on the individual and, you know, the family they're from and the society they're in and the religion they partake in, and so on. So most people, I would say, agree with certain fundamental tenets of, let's say, objective ethics. Like killing is wrong. Like, you know, pretty much most people agree with, like, the law, at least, like, the majority of the law, or at least the most important parts of the law. Now, you can basically, like, use marginal cases and assume that people are objectivists, that they believe in the law, that they think the law's right, and that will probably get you somewhere. To be honest, like, most people, like, I don't have to, like, when I've been like on the street doing, like, street activism, most people have not been like, but morality is subjective, man, what are you talking about? It's usually when I have to talk to people online, and people online are different from the general population because they're far stupider. I'm joking, obviously, but, like, I think that people online are more skeptical. I think that the more even more philosophically educated to some degree, at least the people I deal with online. Now, that doesn't mean they're necessarily right. I think that when you do find someone who comes across, when they go get run marginal case, and they're like, all I care about is humans, though, and then they stick, like, well, my primitive or my fundamental value or my axiom is, you know, humanity. Well, you're not going to be able to get anywhere with them unless you can go into meta-ethics. And that's really when it's important to talk about, you know, objectivism and, like, objective and subjective ethics, like, frameworks. Now, obviously, I argue for an objective framework. I think that an individual's value is inherent to what they are. They are an instance of will. And by that, I take you could say a subject, conscious agent trying to obtain a given end, okay? And that end relates ontologically to a state of experience, so something like pain, pleasure, well-being, that kind of thing, meaning, and ultimately an individual's trying to live what I would consider an authentic, free life. They're trying to express themselves to obtain a good life, what they believe to be a good life. And to do that, they all engage in some form of ethics. Even the people who believe that they are subjectivists or nihilists pretty much all do this as well. They essentially, propose at least a hypothetical imperative to obtain a given goal. And a hypothetical imperative is essentially a hypothesis of, if I want X, then I have to do Y. So like if I do want cake, then I'll have to go to Tesco to buy it or something, right? Now, every hypothetical imperative proposed is either essentially absurd and not connected to anything. It's not grounded, or it is grounded, and it's grounded in, let's say, an act of the nature of the individual, or the functional concept of that individual, if you will. Now, I think humans don't have a specific nature, which makes this more difficult, because if I could just go, right, well, everything is right or wrong dependent upon the nature of the individual, and every human wants the same thing, and they should want the same thing, and that's how it works. Well, no, I don't think that. I think humans are unique in that they modify their nature through self-consciousness. They become aware of themselves and nature. Like, their instincts no longer have the same hold. They have the drives, but the expression of those drives has become socio-political. It's become sublimated in our society. Food, water, and sex turn into, pizza, Diet Coke, and porn. It doesn't really necessarily correlate to how, like, a biological perspective. People even reject these drives because they feel like these drives are necessarily causing them more suffering overall. Let's say, like, the over indulgence of, let's say, like, sex in the nofap community. They don't want necessarily the porn sublimation. They reject it outright. So it becomes obviously more and more complex. Now, what I would say is that these drives, these fundamental drives, I do take to be ontological, as in, we do have a will, and that will is trying to express itself to create the greatest overall experience possible for that individual. So everyone wants to be happy. Everyone wants to feel some sort of pleasure response or goodness in their life. But they also associate themselves with others, and they do this to even analyze these drives themselves. Like, you wouldn't understand yourself as a human if you didn't understand species of human and self-associate with them. So, like, I understand myself as a member of my family, but I also understand myself as a member of, let's say, the Newcastle community or the online community in Discord, and I generate an identity, and this identity allows me to express myself to a greater overall possible degree. And everyone's trying to express themselves because everyone's a unique little, like, well, I don't want to say snowflake, but unique little, like, individual, and wants to be, more and more themselves than anything else, which is why, everyone tries to buy, the fancy clothes, the fancy cars, the nice houses. They're all in competition with each other, and this is just how it will work. It's an individualism has taken hold. Now that's just essentially like where we are in terms of this. But how we ought to behave from that point is based on whether there are conflictions in these drives in producing the experiences that we thought were valuable. So engaged in, let's say, individualism in our society, do I find myself feeling inauthentic? Probably. Now, if the goal was feeling authentic and feeling free, I can see that, purchasing products that were chosen for me and sublimating my desires in such a way that I haven't rationally endorsed, I could see as an expression of somebody else's will, like, namely the producer of the clothes, for example, or let's say the producer of games, or whatever it is. And I could find myself feeling inauthentic. I've tried to produce myself a good life, and what I've ended up with is a bad one. And the badness of that, or the negative of that, I take to be experientially self-evident, a priori synthetic. It would be where you would go, let's say this is going to produce a negative experience, a feeling of unfreedom, a feeling of, let's say, suffering. The evidence for that suffering would be, although the argument could be a priori, the evidence for that suffering would be experiential. I experience, like, when I put my hand on a hot stove, I experience pain. Now, that doesn't mean that every time I do put my hand on a hot stove, that I will necessarily characterize it as a bad experience, like, as absolutely wrong. So if I put my hand on a hot stove, But I did it not to, let's say, hurt myself or because I'm an idiot or whatever, because I'm unbelievably clumsy. But let's say I did it because if I didn't do it, someone would be killed or something like that. Then I could have an instancing of meaning and express my will to a greater degree. And this is where I think this is why it gets more and more complex. So not only are we individuals trying to satisfy drives, but our understanding of self, our understanding of those drives, our understanding of our understanding is actually universal. It exists in concepts between individuals within language, within identity. We understand ourselves, our drives, our motivations, everything in relation to a language game and a way of analyzing what we are and what we are trying to achieve, which allows us to produce a self-consciousness. And this is why I would say that overall, we aren't actually separate. We are separate individuals in that we are instanced separately, like I'm me and you are you. But what we are and who we are is empty. There is a nothingness, like in terms of our material, in terms of what we, how we would think. Without culture, it's devoid of meaning. There's nothing there that can be gained. When we become self-aware and we become conscious of these drives, we essentially produce an identity, an instance of mind. So I take mind to be universal, culturally constructed. So our egos, our super egos, and our ids are cultural constructions instanced within in an individual. And so the confliction within our psyche is a confliction within our ideology, and it's something that we need to analyze. So if I realize that I'm producing negative states for me, and I understand that not only do I value myself, but to understand me, I'm also understanding you, and you're also understanding, let's say, everyone around you, because the concepts we use are universals and not individuals, like not particulars. They're not abstracted from the matter, but applied to the matter. Then what I'm doing is actually, construct the ethics of our society are constructing a notion of mind, a notion of self-consciousness, which is trying to express itself. In its self-expression, it comes across hurdles, negative experiences. It learns from those experiences and then internalizes that to essentially try and resolve the conflictions. But some of the conflictions are ideological. So some of the conflictions are, for example, believing that, there is a God, and if I do whatever this God has commanded me in the first place, I'm going to be happier. But that could be totally hegemonic and represent only a certain class of individuals. And if I don't critically analyze that ideology, then I end up in misery. And this is why we need skepticism. And so what ethics and objective ethics allows us to do is analyze the ideology of our society. It allows us to place it against an overall experiential goal, which is the value of everyone's individual experiences. And the ideology which produces the greatest overall experiences or the greatest overall expression of subjectivity is the best ideology. So yeah, I hope that explains why I would argue for objective ethics. And I don't know if I put that as across to a 5-year-old. I think that now I think of it, I probably put that across to like
probably
an undergrad or something. Yeah, I don't know, but I hope that explains it.
If we were in a discussion with a lot of time, I would probably ask 100 follow-up questions.
You can always DM
and I
us,
don't
man.
want to take too much of your time, of course.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to ask
but
another one.
So do I understand it correctly if the wrongness in, like, say, killing an animal or something, it's that there's something in conflict with your own values or conflict with yourself? It's not like where the objectivity comes in, like something that is rooted in yourself and your drives and your goals and how you understand yourself in relation to other humans and beings.
So it's not like, if you look at it like this, like when I find like there is a conflict in myself, that means that there is a conflict in what we are in this scenario. Like this scenario, there's a famous like Ubuntu saying, which says, "I am because we are." So what I am and the conflicts in my experience. Let's say I'm a starving mother and I steal to feed my child, and the conflict is my conflict of duty to my child versus the conflict of duty to my state. When I reach that tragedy, then what I am reaching is not just an aspect of my life, but an issue within the ideology which is trying to express subjectivity itself. Because we aren't engaged in some sort of individualistic or particular analysis. It's a universal analysis. Like what I am is a universal trying to express itself. Like every mind is trying to express itself through this notion of the individual consciousness. When I find that I'm coming into conflict within myself, that conflict is an emulation of the conflict within the state. And the state and the overall cultural self-consciousness that we've produced, which allows us to mesh and work together. It's a conflict in justice itself, if that makes sense.
I wish I could say, oh yeah, thanks, that totally makes sense. But yeah, I don't know exactly where to begin asking follow-up questions, because I think it would be several hours.
That's fine.
So
you can always come talk to us anytime you like.
Yeah, like I'm in your server, so I would probably be interested in just talking about this sometime. And I would also be kind of interested in having a step-by-step, just
I'll try and write one down.
Premises to a conclusion.
Like this is the thing.
Just to understand it.
Yeah, I'm happy to write it down like sometime. I mean, like where I take it from.
Okay.
I mean, best way to look at it is like if you look at something like Kantian Ethics, and then if you take a Kantian position, the categorical imperative, and if you look and add some meat to its bones, then that would be the Hegelian position to say that like look, this the expression of like treating people as a means to an end is actually culturally derived. Our understanding of the ends and our understanding of the means is conceptually dependent upon our investigation, and so our mutual investigation into the self-consciousness in our lives, and that's essentially what I'm arguing for.
Okay, so if I was like a negative utilitarian, would I ever come to an agreement, do you think, with that sort of thinking, or is it?
Well, like,
way to kind of
probably not, because the issue with utilitarianism that I find is that it assumes that our understanding of the end is fixed, that we understand what is good and what is right. Now, what the Hegelian position would argue is that our understanding of the end is constantly moving. Like what we understand to be the greatest expression of right, of justice, is culturally, historically dependent. Like what the Romans would have thought the future looked like would never be what the future would actually look like. If they were to design a utopia, they would produce something very separate to what we would design. Our understanding of God and how God is how he expresses his goodness is not the same as the God that would find in the Bible a lot of the time, especially in the Old Testament, because we would see him as ruthless. But for the ancient Christians, that's a good God. Our understanding of these concepts is forever changing, and I think that a negative utilitarian position assumes that assumes that they know what is negative and positive, whilst the Hegelian position would be our very understanding itself is in a progressive state, which is what he argues in The Science of Logic, that logic itself is progressive.
Yeah, because I'm not at all settled on my meta-ethics. I just have this strong intuition feeling, and it might be that you just have to convince me out of that meta-ethic.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll definitely give it a go. I hate intuition. I'm probably like the most I genuinely hate intuition. I don't trust intuitions at all. I mean, like look at it like this. I think like you're anemic, you start craving ice. You don't start craving iron. You know.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway,
All
thanks, man.
Yeah. Good talking to you, and give it to the next person, I guess.
Ooh, sorry, I didn't mean to kick him out that bad. Sorry, mate. No, thanks very much. Good talking to you.
Yeah, we do want to
speed things up.
do want to ask for people to not ask too many questions, because we do have a lot of people that want to ask questions. But
yeah, I'll try and speed it up.
Hello, I have a question.
Hello, how you doing, man?
Hello, I'm doing very good, and you?
I'm doing good.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Well, it's mostly a clarification, then a follow-up. So I remember I saw the debate you had with Jack Angstreich, the Ask Yourself server.
I never really debated Jack on Ask Yourself server, so...
I remember you debated meta ethics with him.
I don't think we've ever debated. I don't know if me and Jack's ever debated. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't like Jack at all. Mainly because he... not to get into it, but essentially there was like recordings of him sexualizing like 11-year-olds, saying that he would accept sex acts from 11-year-olds. So I don't really like to discuss Jack, but if you try and ask it without talking about Jack, that'll be great.
It was clarification. It was on the religion server. It was on a religion server.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go for it.
So is it true that you conceded that subjectivism does not entail non-cognitivism, and that logical vegan subjectivism is possible?
I didn't concede that. That I think that it's like what if you actually watch what happened. I argued that a subjectivist would be required to take like a Humean position in terms of motivation, which means like passions would be essentially producing an individual's understanding of ethics. So like your desires, your attitudes are coming from a non-cognitive position, and that's what Jack actually agreed with. He was like, yeah, there's nothing controversial about that. And so what I argue is that all of that essentially is bottoming out at a non-cognitive level, that our our attitudes, whatever we are proposing as our attitudes in a cognitive level, is only an expression of a non-cognitive drive from which the individual has no control over. And I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I think that there are arguments against this. Let's say if someone takes maybe a behaviorist position, or something like that, and tries to say that look, the cognitive drives are of themselves unimportant. Like, the content, the meaning of everything is based on the behavior, and is not private. And I think that would be the only real way that they could get around it, is trying to say like that the individuals' behaviors themselves are public, and that publicity, that like common domain, is what allows language to be formed in such a way, from non-cognitive states to be understood. Because if they take a non-cognitive position that makes it private, and that non-cognitive states are private, then I would argue that subjectivism itself is being based on these Humean drives is impossible. That it just leads you straight to absurdity. And I think the only way to get out of that is maybe through some sort of behaviorism or something like that. And to give him his credit, the only person that actually came up with that counter argument that I've talked to was Kane B, and he's like a PhD student in philosophy. Like, that was quite a surprising argument, to be fair. But that's the only one that I've actually found that really defends the position, I think, against a Wittgensteinian private language argument.
Okay, I had another question. It's mostly about. It's not really like a question on, let's say, philosophy. It's more a question about you and like ask yourself.
All right, yeah. Me and Ask Yourself are on pretty good terms at the minute, so like haven't had any problems with Ask Yourself for a while, and like I think vice versa. Like, we talked amicably. So yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah, I've seen that now you and Isaac are on good terms, but I remember back then you weren't really. Was it because Isaac and you disagree? I remember he used to call you perspective sophistry,
Yeah,
and it wasn't
yeah,
so
good
great.
old days. Well, like I don't really want to get into it, to be honest, because like I think that like what happened I think me and Isaac probably see it in different ways, but I don't think that's necessarily that big of an issue. So Isaac, I think, seen me as like conceding, name the trait, and me objections to it, and I think that he basically said that he appreciated me willingness to concede that. I saw Isaac change his understanding of name the trait over time, and it become a different argument. The interpretation of the argument radically changed. And he said he didn't want to argue about the interpretation of what it was and what it is and whether it was the same. I think it changed. And when it changed into, the what I described as weak name the trait, where it's just like weak and strong in terms of philosophical positions, like the application, it essentially alleviated the confliction within were arguments. There was nothing invalid with the argument anymore, or unsound. It just became essentially immortal marginal cases, and I had no problem with that. And so, yeah, and that sort of alleviated the tension between them.
Okay, I just want to thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
So I assume you have no problem with the current rendition of name the trait.
Well, there's nothing like wrong with it. I mean, like it's not an argument for veganism. It's not an argument for anything other than like checking if an individual's contradicting themselves. That's all it is. It's just a consistency check. So yeah, I haven't got a problem with that. Nothing really. I mean, it's not an argument I use. Just because I use marginal cases. And yeah, I mean, like that's all. I mean, really, the only thing that I don't like about it is that sometimes hypotheticals get a bit wacky, and it makes things like it makes conversation. It makes it seem a little bit like I don't want to say like what word I want to use. It can make the like vegan seem a little bit detached from reality, and I think people like Stefan Molyneux try to abuse that. Like you try to say like, oh, I've got to assume wizards and stuff. Well, like no, not really. So I just sort of stick to marginal cases and like genuinely point out like real life marginal cases if I can, just to aid in the grounding of the argument. But that's really it.
Sure. Okay. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for answering my question. Goodbye.
Goodbye. V, come on down.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
Glad to hear that.
Oh, I hear myself.
Can you?
Now it's fine. Thank you. Yeah. So I have a question or like a situation that happened to me at work today, actually, and I'm vegan for a while now, and today at work we had like a little team building event, and there was a situation where we had to there was an egg, or multiple eggs actually, but my group got one egg, and we had to build something to and then throw the egg down from well, it was like 2 meters. I don't know if you speak meters, like I don't know, 6.
No, don't worry. I'm
like
civilized. I do use metric. Yes, it's fine. Yeah.
It was high, and we had to throw it down from there, and it wasn't allowed to break. And now for me, it was a little strange to like deal with the whole situation of like doing things with an egg. I know it's just an egg. I mean, it's not like a chicken being thrown down somewhere or whatever. No, but I just don't support.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Like I would feel uncomfortable in that scenario as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it's a little daunting. I mean, my coworkers know that I'm vegan, but of course, my boss won't be thinking like, oh, I mean, obviously, it makes sense in this situation to use an egg because what else would you take? I can't think of something right now, but I'm sure there are
fragile. There's probably
alternatives,
like
but
a fragile alternative. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. An egg is fragile. Yeah, exactly.
It's
But
cheap as
what do
well. I think that's
as an ethical vegan, do in a moment like that, or in general, that I can still be ethical, but not like hinder everyone around me, or hinder my job or whatever,
Yeah,
in
I
things
mean,
like
if
that.
you're worried about your job, I would probably just participate if you don't feel like you could say anything and it would actually or do anything without jeopardizing your position. I don't think that would be like, in terms of the definition, possible and practicable. Like, if you're going to become unemployed from that, you're only just hurting another sentient being, yourself. On the other hand, if you think that the position's secure enough, if you think that there is you're not going to be made unemployed, then I would actually, like, when you said you don't want to be disruptive, I would probably be disruptive. I'd probably say I'm not going to participate. Like, if there's, just because, like, I would just it makes people aware of your position as like, I'm a vegan. I don't agree with the use of animal products. Not only that, is it also encourages them next time to seek an alternative, because unless there is some sort of inconvenience, they're not going to seek an alternative. They're just going to do, all right, we'll just keep doing it this way. It works every time. Even the vegan does it,
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just say, like, in that scenario, if you feel like you can say something, do something about it. Don't participate. If even write like, even if you have participated, and let's say you don't want to participate in the future, write to HR. Just say, like, look, you wouldn't ask I don't know, like a Hindu to, I don't know, like, disrespect like cows or something. So why were you asking me? You know that it's a protected belief. I tried to be as amicable as possible, but I feel I've been put into a pretty unfair position. Can you not find another team building exercise that doesn't require these animal products? And I think that, to be entirely honest with you, that's, if you raise it to HR, they're like, all right, well, okay, this is something that we maybe need to consider. And obviously, if you're not bringing it up personally, there's minimal risk to your job. So.
Yeah. For me, it's a little difficult because I don't really work in an area where veganism in general is like widespread. When I said I'm vegan, like, in general, just like different worldviews are not very widespread. Like, I work in a school, so also the team is very small. So it always feels a little difficult to actually change something, because everyone knows instantly. So if I write to, like, my boss now about it, everyone's just gonna be like, oh, she's being difficult again or whatever. And for me, it's always this, if I'm not in an environment where I'm every day, so like at work I'm every day, but like with my family or my friends I'm not every day. There it's easier for me to do activism and like actually talk about veganism, but in a place where I feel I can get judged every day, I feel a little insecure. And it that kind of like troubles me so much, and I don't know how to like deal with that a little, or be more secure in my activism and veganism, because I talk about it. So and they ask me what I eat and everything. I talk about it and I say my opinions, but I always feel it's like a wall. And not just with that, there's also other like cultural things, because it's quite a conservative team and all of these things. So it's sometimes very, very troubling. But thank you very much for your answer.
Oh no, it's okay. And I think that, look, like if you can't say something in your like, this is Kant made a distinction actually, which might be helpful. He said there's private and public. Also, yeah, and I think the private he actually considered to be like work, like places where you need, where, like, if you bring up the political, you could lose your job. You need to just sort of fulfill your overall mandate and just go home. And he thought that was fine. Bear in mind, this guy's like, ignorance is, what is it? Sapa would have the courage to use your own understanding, and like he thought that ignorance was the result of laziness and cowardice. So he's not like someone who's, essentially saying don't think for yourself and just do what you're told. He's basically saying, look, in certain circumstances, you're gonna have to go along to get along, and if you're political in the wrong circumstance, then you could end up, undermining your overall goal.
Yeah.
If you find that it's gonna cause you problems, then I would probably recommend not doing it and just being political outside of work. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. You could even, and as I say, like, you could even try and like supersede the normal chain of command or something like that in your environment. In terms of feeling uncomfortable, I'm not gonna lie. You that's just something that you're gonna have to kind of process. I make an argument essentially that I think that vegans are essentially the eatable fodder in our society. We are the default, like the default way to approach a vegan in our society is hatred. And that's because we are telling people not to express their desires in the way that they wish to express them. We're essentially showing the monstrosity of our society to itself. Like, you know, if you say I'm a vegan, just by being a vegan, you are saying that there is something wrong with the default mode of consumption. And that makes people self-conscious. It makes them aware of themselves. And people don't want to be aware of themselves. They want to be in ignorance and consume mindlessly. So you're just gonna, like, if I'm honest, you're gonna have to get used to being hated, because it's just the way that's gonna go down. And then, you know, even the people who are more sympathetic, they're probably the people that are more likely to consider going vegan in general. If you find that your team's very conservative and are unwilling to listen, I would say that overall, like, you know, you can't rationalize with someone that can't, you know, there's no sense rationalizing with someone who can't be rationalized with. But if they might just need the conversation. So if they bring it up, seize the opportunity to, you know, turn the tide, like push it back on them. And then if they try to, you know, call you out for it, say like, look, you raised it, you did this. Is that appropriate for work? I've only responded in kind. So don't let other people be political, and you refrain, if you can help it. Like, don't let them just essentially be politically dominant. And if people keep, let's say that they don't want you to respond, and they're like, look, I don't want to hear this, but they keep asking you questions, or they keep trying to say something about it. Well, at that point, it's become, I would say, workplace bullying or workplace harassment, and I would report them.
Oh, okay. That's good. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm happy to hear these things. It makes me feel a little better, and I would also like to mention that even in my conservative team, there are actually people that always make sure when we have like team eating or whatever to bring me vegan food and things like that. And I really, really appreciate every single person out there that accommodates for vegans and actually thinks about these things.
Yeah,
so
that's nice.
props
that's
to
nice of them.
these people.
That is nice of them.
Yeah. Well, so thank you very much, and have fun on the stage.
Right. Take it easy.
Bye.
Hello everyone.
Hello there, mate. How you doing?
I'm doing good. My question is, I'm just curious as to why we should care about the lives of non-human creatures. Because the way I see it, my main axiom is minimizing human suffering and maximizing human happiness. So when I see, for example, eating animals or something, I don't see it as actually affecting the human race or humanity. So I don't know why we should really like value that over just humans, I guess.
I mean,
or our like taste or something.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Thanks for your question. So, I mean, the animal agricultural industry is absolutely awful for humans and animals. If you value humans, you shouldn't engage in the production of animal agriculture, in animal agriculture as means of production. So, like, first things at the top of my head, and even from an anthropocentric ethic, you know, you value humans alone. You've got to consider the environmental impact and the way that it's displacing large numbers of individuals from their homes and their habits, like, you know, like where they live. For example, in the lowlands of like Bangladesh or something like that, or Indonesia, you're going to find that there's going to be incredible amounts of flooding, that the deltas there are going to essentially disappear, and that there are going to be individuals there who are made homeless and refugees. Then there's not just the displacement of individuals, which is going to be massive, but also droughts, floods, in terms of global warming and climate change. animal agriculture is the second largest production of greenhouse gases, and an Oxford study put the greenhouse gas emissions that could be reduced if we were to go vegan. If everyone was to go vegan, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that we could reduce is about 28% of overall emissions. And that's massive. And that's because you consider, the Amazon rainforest is being cut down because it's being cut down for animal products, again, for space for cows and so on, and for food that's being fed to cows, is a massive carbon sink, and it's just being destroyed. In terms of ocean dead zones are coming from the massive amounts of crops that we're producing. We are spraying loads of crops with really negative pesticides, which are, then seeping into groundwater and polluting 35,000 miles of river in the United States, and destroying oceans where these rivers actually run out, and essentially killing all of the animals in that environment, but also, essentially killing the oceans as which we are dependent upon, because of the excess nitrogen in the area. Then you've got like ocean plastic, which is like 46% of ocean plastic is detached fishing nets. So this is just the amount of environmental damage that we're doing, and its consideration and its impact towards humans. It's massive. We could feed a lot more of the population on a vegan diet, on a plant-based diet. 70% of our farmland could be reduced. We could reduce our farmland, by 70% if we were to all consume a plant-based diet. The actual environmental impact is unbelievable, and that's just from an anthropocentric position. And then you've got slaughterhouses. Slaughterhouse work is associated with what's called perpetration-induced traumatic stress, PITS disorder. It's a form of PTSD which occurs when an individual perpetuates violence. What we've found is that these individuals go through a process called psychological doubling. Psychological doubling is essentially a split in the individual's personality in which they create a second persona who's capable of essentially performing these actions. The second persona is more violent, these individuals become quick out of temper, they have feelings of disintegration, insomnia, paranoia, and are more likely to engage in self-destructive behaviors as well. So alcoholism, drug addiction, and have much higher conviction rates. Tied to the conviction rates as well is the rates of violence. You can directly show rates of violence next to slaughterhouses. So, for example, a slaughterhouse that has 7,500 workers has, in that area, has double the arrest and report rates if there was no slaughterhouse at all. So, rates of domestic violence especially are directly tied to the size of the slaughterhouse facility. So, if you consider humans at all, I would consider at least a plant-based diet, because the production of animal products is destroying our environment, but it's also creating a working hellhole and demanding that someone be put in there in order to survive within our culture. It produces a job which I wouldn't wish on me worst enemy. In terms of why you should care about an animal, so that's just, I'm just argued there that if you're from an anthropocentric position, you should not engage in non-vegan or at least non-plant-based behaviors. Let's say why should you care about an animal and their interests? And first thing I'd like to say is, why should I accept your axiom? That's one of the main things. Like, why should anyone accept your axiom? Why should you even think that your axiom could possibly be correct? It's like let's say I proposed a new form of geometry, and in this geometry, I said that I don't know. I'm going to assume that the shortest distance between straight lines is actually a curve. It's like a I don't know, like a curved shape. Now that's my axiom. And then people would go like, well, why are you engaged in that notion of mathematics, right? Like, why are you rejecting geometry as we see it? And I just do. It's my axiom. People are going to ask why, right? Because let's be honest, mathematics is a tool. It's a form of equipment. Same thing with science. If I was to say like, look, my axiom is to assume that there are actually 10 forms of matter. 10 forms of states of matter. None of them are solid, liquid, or gas. And like jelly is a form of matter. I don't know, custard is a form of matter. And I base my notions of physics off these axioms. Why should I accept that? This is why I genuinely loathe this idea that we can just pick and choose our axioms, because there is no reason why I should, for any other epistemological endeavor or epistemic endeavor, could just go, right, I'm going to assume that this entire subject is based off this absolutely non-grounded assumption, and everything in the world is going to work this way from now on. I would rather assume that the subject didn't exist than make just some absolutely ungrounded claim. Now, I think it's become popular online to hold this position. I think that you get presuppositionalists. I don't think they know what they're talking about. I think that even people who have to be honest, I think to be honest, to hold this claim, you've got to have absolutely no real understanding of meta-ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, or philosophy as a whole. I've never seen a good argument for it that way at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. So if you're arguing that it's socio-politically relative, I can get behind that. I can understand why you're coming from that position. If you are arguing that it's related to, I don't know, some form of aestheticism, and you're arguing for something like leotards, post-modernity or something, I can understand that position. But just making up some random rules and saying this is how the subject works is absolutely absurd. And the worst part is that it doesn't even have the benefit of absurdity, which is just accepting that this is an absurd abstraction and that none of it actually matters. It's actually pretending that there is some form of soundness to the position. Anyway, so let's just take your assumption that let's just take it that you can produce axioms and that these axioms are somehow valuable. I'd say it's equipment. I'd say that this whole field, to be valuable in and of itself, to have for have any engagement into this field, has to be able to perpetuate some sort of value, from which cognitive success can even be judged. So if I was to dismiss, for example, all of ethics, how would I understand notions of cognitive success, and how would that function? I would argue that epistemology is fundamentally tied to ethics, that our understanding of knowledge, of truth conditions, is fundamentally tied to notions of what we consider to be correct and incorrect within, in terms of methodology, in terms of socio-political engagements, and overall, what we assume the goal of cognitive success to be. When I seek truth, what am I trying to achieve here, if not an accurate description of reality? And what is that accurate description of reality trying to essentially facilitate? So I think there is a meta-epistemological problem there. In terms of my argument, I would say that there is a dialectical relationship engaged between two individuals, at least, but multiple individuals are engaged in a dialectical understanding of truth and of themselves and of reality as a whole. And the only way that this is going to function epistemologically is if we create universals from which individuals endorse and accept and are capable of endorsing and accepting. And so this actually purports to their life. That if I can't go, well, actually, this is right or wrong in relation to my experience, then it's an unfalsifiable claim and I have no reason to accept your axiom. So ultimately, in terms of all the axiomatic, the foundation of ethics, what is good, bad, right and wrong, it has to purport to a universal foundation, namely all sentient beings, all consciousness. Otherwise, it's ungrounded. It has no real applicability or it's not falsifiable. In which case, I'd just dismiss it outright. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, well, it surely does. And honestly, it's probably one of the only vegan arguments which has somewhat convinced me. So thank you very much for your answer.
No, that's great to hear. Have a nice day, mate. Alexander, come on down.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
I can. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing all right. I just have a really quick question. It's just about Hegel, if you don't mind. Really
quick about Hegel. This should be good.
I know. It's kind of oxymoron, but I just want to know, are you capable of reading Hegel by yourself? Is that possible? Or do you like literally need a secondary? Because every time I try to read Hegel by myself,
I can read
it's
Hegel.
incomprehensible to me. So when you read Hegel, did you have like a secondary source with you, or did you just read it by yourself? You understood it, and then you just grounded your philosophy based off what you just read?
Well, I had lectures on Hegel. So before I picked up Hegel, I had lectures on Hegel. I had lectures on Hegel. Then I picked up Hegel and I was like, wow, why is this absolutely convoluted? It is unbelievably difficult to read, and he does not write he's not layperson friendly at all. He's clearly writing for academics of his time, with no consideration at all of people who aren't philosophically, unbelievably philosophically engaged. And as well, like, you've got to remember, like, Hegel grew up, he doesn't even I don't even think he thinks the same as most people. He grew up reading the ancient Greeks in ancient Greek. Because his mom taught him ancient Greek as a child. So the guy, the way he thinks, the way he engages in metaphysics, the man is obsessed with metaphysics, clearly. And he makes this argument that people, like the travesty of our society is essentially, or his society, is that they don't teach metaphysics anymore, at least properly. And it's totally neglected. And so I think to get a good understanding of Hegel, you probably want a broader understanding of philosophy as a whole, of metaphysics, and try to understand what he's trying to, and try and engage with what he's trying to achieve. But I would recommend no one pick up Hegel, like, primary, without really a guide, or like something like that first, because otherwise it's just going to seem absolutely obscure, convoluted, and before you've even, gotten a few like pages in, you're just going to be like, all right, bollocks to this, and put it down. So I'd recommend something like Singer's Introduction to Hegel, just to give you a brief understanding of what he's going on about. Norman's Beginner's Guide to the Phenomenology. I really like David Rose's, if you're interested in his ethics, I think The Philosophy of Right is the best book for Hegel's ethics by far. And I would recommend David Rose's Reader's Guide for The Philosophy of Right. I think that's brilliant. And you know what? You can read that, and if you want to pick up, you can read it alongside The Philosophy of Right, which is what he recommends, but you can read it without it and then pick up The Philosophy of Right later. But I certainly wouldn't recommend just picking up the book. I mean, like, obviously I read it without any sources. I picked it up and I just kept reading it and rereading it and reading it and rereading it, and then eventually you get used to the style. If you do that, like if you read Hegel enough, you start to see how he's actually arguing in the way that he's speaking and the words that he's using and what he means by those words. But it's not something that you can just pick up and know offhand. He doesn't write in, he's not a terrible writer. People think he's a bad writer. I don't think he's a terrible writer. I think that he's doing very high level philosophy. It's very convoluted, and I think that he's writing towards people who are academically trained in the first place. He also writes deliberately in such a way that's kind of obscure, and makes you work for it. I think that he writes in a way that, it's a dialectical process. He writes in a way that's negating itself constantly. So you read one passage in which he makes an argument, and then the next passage is an argument against that, and then an argument against that, and then an argument against that, and it's just on throughout the book. And once you get used to that kind of style, it changes the way you read Hegel. So thing I would recommend is, you can get used to reading Hegel, like, absolutely. And sometimes he's really concise, and sometimes he writes something beautifully. Sometimes he writes something very convoluted and poorly or like difficultly. And you've just got to kind of either persevere, or I would recommend just picking up some secondary literature. I mean, unless you want to become a Hegel scholar, there's no real necessity for you to engage in, let's say, like, and like really heavily with the primaries. You know, there's Howlgate, there's like David Rose, Peter Singer's got a good introduction there. There's Richard Norman, and then even contemporary philosophers who have been inspired by Hegel. There's McIntyre. There's loads. So yeah, hope that helps. Is that cool? I'm gonna move you to the audience now, Alexander.
Yeah, that might be broken. But yeah, okay. Seeing that there are a couple people, we're going to prioritize people that are in the server. They're verified. So I guess we'll just next person if you're ready to continue. Cool.
All right, Gary. Hello, Gary.
Hey there, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. How about you?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Thanks for coming on and talking. I liked your point about, I think you said it was like I am because we are. Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, that's it's like an old friend told us that it's an Ubuntu saying.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I just want to go on about that part about like just trying to change everybody's mind about veganism, right? Like, is it possible? Because like, there's just so many non-vegans out there. Like, there's always gonna be more people not being able to change who they are, if that makes sense. Like,
well, this is maybe quite the contrary. Like, I think that if anything, if I am because we are, and what we are in me is a vegan, then I think that it instances the possibility of veganism as being almost synthetically verified. Like it is possible. I'm doing it. I think that when people saying that people can't change, I don't think so. I think that people won't change. I think our desires can be sublimated within our society. I think we've come to the knowledge of that point, which is why people are vegan and capable of being vegan in our society. We know that veganism's an ideology which is even understandable, even comprehensible to individuals in our society. If it wasn't, people wouldn't even engage with the notion. They would just not only dismiss us as mad, but they wouldn't even understand what was going on.
I just want to make the point that I totally agree with that, but I just want to give some precursor. I've been like 6 years vegetarian, right? And I actually saw me changing other people and stuff like that. So I do see that, it is possible, but like just as the global, right? Like you actually just changed my whole point, or like changed my whole views with that single line, even though I was in the mind frame that it is possible and stuff. But once you said that we are, I associated it more with the global collective of being like, maybe it isn't, so can you continue on what you were saying? But I just wanted to say, like, I do agree that
I've just realized how quiet I must have been, by the way, guys. I thought I turned myself up, and I didn't turn myself up, and I must have been really quiet. So that must be really bad for everyone who's watched this. I'm very sorry. In terms of the global situation, if I've understood you correctly, let us know if the audio is better, by the way, guys. In terms of the global situation, I think that obviously cultural concepts being the way they are, you're not going to be like, the only thing that we can do is engage in dialogue and cross-cultural dialogue, and I think that's vitally important for this to really. Tell us if you want to elaborate on the point, or if I'm not understanding correctly, just intersect. Cross-cultural dialogue would be really important, but also not trying to force progression. The issue is. The issue really is that let's say we try to force progression, or force an ethical progression, the institution the individual finds themselves they won't find themselves at home in it. They'll find themselves being oppressed by it. It'll be a master and a slave, like a master-slave dialectic. They'll find themselves feeling inauthentic. They won't understand the reasons that this behind the ideology, and overall they'll see it as, let's say, like a form of imperialism. And so this is why dialogue would necessarily be very important. In our own society, I think that it's very easy. We can appeal to shared conceptions and shared understandings. In cross-cultural dialogue, it requires an individual to understand and engage with the culture that the individual's from. I don't think that you can just... You can make an argument, don't get me wrong, but you can't make an argument without being able to speak the same language as an individual, and that's not just simply understanding the words, but understanding the context from which the words are given meaning, the forms of life. And so if I was to talk to someone from, let's say, like Iran or something like that, I'd have to acknowledge that their cultural understanding of what right is vastly different to mine. And let's say I believe that it's totally theocratic, that let's say they're very much like they're a fundamentalist, they're a Muslim, and they take everything in Islam to be, sacrosanct and will not question it. And let's say one of the positions in that is that, it's okay to kill and eat animals, which I think a lot of Muslims do take, and, a lot of Christians do as well. There's only two ways I could go about it. I could internally critique. I could understand Islam. I could learn Islam and see if I could find whether it's actually applicable, like to argue for veganism with internally. And if I find that it's not, then I would probably go for an external critique. I'd say Islam is false. And that people aren't going to like you for that, But you do get through to some people, and, you can make arguments as to why you should take maybe as a non-fundamental, like you don't have to go like everyone should just stop believing in whatever religion they have or whatever it is, or their cultural beliefs. But you could understand that they try and show that unless they modify their cultural beliefs, they'll lead themselves into absurdity, and they'll actually dismiss, for example, the possibility of understanding God without a form of hermeneutics or something like that, like philosophical hermeneutics, which is what I argue against most fundamentalists. And some people listen, some people don't. Do I think that it's fundamentally impossible for people to, get a grasp of these situations, like this concept? No, I think that it's 100% possible. And as you say, you've seen people change around you. Do I think that it's likely that a lot of people will? I think that the likelihood is depending on how far back. Like if I was trying to convince someone that the world is, like a sphere spinning hundreds of thousands of miles, spinning like, was it 250 kilometers an hour or something, 250,000 kilometers an hour, flying around the sun, and this is like, I don't know, I'm talking to someone who doesn't understand the Copernican revolution, doesn't understand any of this, and let's say they believe that the sun's being pulled across the sky by a guy in a chariot. I'm gonna really struggle, man. I'm gonna have to meet them where they're at, and where they're at is the arguments they are using to fortify that position in the first place. And if I can try and walk them through, I can take them, in the words of Aristotle, from what is known to what is knowable. And I think that's how we should engage in discourse. Meet people where they're at and try and progress them through. Easier said than done. I struggle all the time. Have you heard us try to explain Hegel to people? But at the same time, it's the best way to go about it. And this is why the Socratic Method is perhaps one of the greatest ways to engage people in these concepts, because you force them to see the contradictions in their own position. If you can lead them to a point of aporia or enlightened confusion, they'll start challenging their own position, because they have to relieve the confliction within their psyche, and it's going to be relieved one way or the other, and you can just kind of point them in the right direction. So yeah, I hope that explains things.
Yeah, no, cool. That does really provide a bit more hope now that you explained it. What was that method called again? Sorry.
The Socratic Method. Earth Leonard?
Nah, man, I'm a bit basic guy.
Oh, Earthling Ed on YouTube, he basically just does the Socratic Method all the time. If you watch his like interviews with people, like the way that he like talks to people, like he's got hundreds of them. That's what he does, just the Socratic Method all the time, and it's great. Like
what
this.
would the method of leading a horse to water be called, if that makes sense?
Well, you can't lead a horse to water. Well, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. That's probably the Socratic Method. Like I don't know. I don't know what that would be philosophically in terms of methodology, if I'm honest.
Yeah, like not being, like that's just the method I've been like taking, like naturally letting the conversation and my view get shown to them compared to being like, yo, stop eating meat.
Sort of lead by example.
Lead by example is the basic thing. But in terms of like philosophy,
I think you could say that you're changing the norms and conventions of society, which would be more disciplinary and stuff like that. Excuse me. You probably see an example of how that would like behaviorally affect people by, you know, like maybe the philosophy of like Foucault or something like that, where he talks about like discipline and punishment. We're all in a disciplinary society. Well, kind of. It's become more complex than that now, but in terms of our norms and conventions, we're actually, you know, in just being engaged in conversation with each other or engaged in analysis and life around each other, we create modes of judgment in which people understand themselves in reference to us. Like if I'm eating vegan and everyone else is eating meat at the table, I might feel out of place, but they also feel out of place, just my being there. So there's power is everywhere. In the words of Stephen Lukes. No, that's in the words of Foucault. Power is everywhere.
too easy. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Take it easy. Their audio is low compared to mine. For God's sake, mine was tiny before. Right.
Hello.
Hello. How you doing, man?
Okay, I'm doing fine, and thanks for like accepting my request. So I'm actually from India, and I have two questions to ask.
No problem.
So I'm a vegetarian, so like, but the thing is, I also work out every day for like 2 hours, so I need some sort of protein.
Right. Yeah.
And like I can go for the vegan options too, but they're like too damn expensive. Like a packet of milk might cost me around like 30 cents, and the same packet of milk which is vegan, like some vegan substitute might cost me around like $1 or $2. And like think of it as this way, like the 3 meals of my day cost about $2, so it would be like I should choose between 3 meals a day or between one pack of vegan substitute for protein. So that somewhat feels like I want to be a vegan, but there aren't any options. So like, what do you say for that?
Well, I mean, like, I guess, like, it depends on what you're trying to substitute. Obviously, you're talking about you need some sort of protein. So you need, like, about 0.75 grams of protein per pound of lean mass. So, like, depending on how much you weigh. I'm assuming that if you're eating 3 meals a day, like, India's got loads of vegan options, man. Like, lentils, legumes, like, you can't, like, you know, like, chana dal or something. Like that.
That's true.
Like so like whether it's you know, whether you're using something like, I don't know, like whether you're using like chickpeas, lentils, or anything like that. I don't imagine that chickpeas or lentils are too expensive in India, are they?
They aren't, but the thing is, like they don't have the exact like I don't know the exact figures or and all, but I'm sure that milk is more like about 200 or 300 milliliters of milk might contain more protein than, let's say, 1 kilo of legumes or chana dal or whatever.
I don't believe so. I can check for you if you want. Like, so for example, like milk, one would it be like whole milk you're having, yeah? Yeah, so
yeah,
like
we do have whole milk.
Yeah, so like 1 cup of whole milk has about like, so let's say, what's that in, like put that in mils, because I don't know, so like let's say 200 mils of milk. This is actually, I don't know if it's whole milk or not. has about 14 grams of protein. If I was to put like lentils, like 100 grams of lentils, has 9 grams of protein for 100 grams of lentils. So if you were to have like, for example, like I don't know how you actually measure out lentils over there. So if I was to have like a tin of lentils over here in water, it'd be like 200 odd grams. So like, let's say I was to have like a tin of lentils, I'd probably get about 20 grams of protein, like 20 grams of protein from that. Which is more than the milk. If I was to have like 200, like if I was to have a cup of milk, like it's saying that I would have about 8 grams for a cup of whole milk for this. But I think it's probably a bit more than that. I would probably be about maybe 15 grams or something. So actually I'll tell you, it says this is for, let's see, no, it's saying 8 grams. I'll have to double check, but like, but yeah, if you can get soybeans as well, if you can get soybeans and you wanted to make like soy milk, you can make it yourself.
I'm actually allergic to like soybeans, so yeah,
that's unfortunate. But you could use something like so for example split peas. So like, is it like yellow split peas? If you get some yellow split peas, which should be really cheap and common there, like you can get like that to make a pretty good if you wanted like a milk replacement that was high in protein, you could use something like that. And all you gotta do is blend it with water and then put it through like either like a sieve, like a nut milk bag or something, cheesecloth.
Yeah, and my second question was like presently I'm part of a university and like I'm a part of a committee that feeds dogs every day. So for once a week we feed them with non-vegetarian food, just because we think that like dogs are primarily carnivorous and like you need to have some sort of non-vegetarian food for them. But like, how do you think that is true? Like, it is an inherent nature for dogs to be non-vegetarian and like be inclined towards eating that. And what do you say with that?
Well, I don't think that dogs are more carnivorous than not. If I'm honest, I think that I would argue that dogs are omnivores. You know, they're opportunistic predators. As long as they get enough protein, they're absolutely fine. It's just making sure they get enough protein. One of the longest living dogs in the world was vegan, eating primarily lentils. You can actually go and see that diet online. They live to like 27. Yeah, I don't think that there's any necessity to feed dogs meat or anything like that. As long as you're just making sure that they get protein. You can get like vegan dog foods. I don't know the accessibility to vegan dog food over there, but you can make it yourself. There are recipes on there. Just making just be sure that you know, the dog's getting essentially enough protein. That's it. Like, just make sure that they get enough protein and they'll be absolutely fine. But like, you know, again, it would be like making sure that they get like either like lots of like lentils and legumes and stuff like that.
Okay, thanks. Well, that's all the questions I had.
Yeah, no problem, man. Well, take it easy.
Definitely.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
So you probably get this a lot, but I'm not vegan, but I'm very interested in the subject. And I use TikTok quite every day, and you can probably see where this is coming. I want to know your opinion on the vegan teacher. If you think she's like a fake or like a complete fool.
Honestly, I know this is going to sound like probably baffling, but I never watched any of her content at all. I know that she said some spicy things, something about LGBT people, and I never really engaged with her at all. Just because, like, I don't know, I probably should have. I just never willed myself to do it. I'm not sure what she necessarily said overall. I know that there was bad things. That's it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. Have a good day.
You too, man.
Hello?
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm fine. What about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
Great. So, Can you hear me all right?
I can, yeah.
Okay, that's good. So I'm kind of scared of having my V card retracted for this question and my position, but here I go. I've noticed a lot of vegans tend to make the case that wearing leather is inherently wrong, even in the case of it being like hand-me-down or something you've owned for a long time.
I don't know. I would never make that argument. Every vegan I know doesn't really care. Not only do they not care, I mean the argument's pretty plain and simple, isn't it? Like, you're not producing any. It's about avoiding exploitation and cruelty. It's already occurred when it's secondhand leather, or you've already purchased it and it's a long time ago. So getting rid of that leather is not going to undo the harm done to cows, chickens, or pigs. So the only argument's normative, whether you perpetuate the use of that product, but you also got to consider the environmental impact of buying new products as well. If you've got to buy new shoes or whatever, and whether you can afford it. So yeah. Anyway, continue.
You pretty much summed up my position there as well. But I've noticed actually I've been in Ellie Vegan Gaze's streams a couple of times, and she's made this argument that it's morally comparable, and I've actually said that I don't think you have the same moral obligation to not wear leather as not eating meat. But any case, I think that this might be a way of scaring people away from veganism. That's kind of one of the memes that people make all the time. But I don't think there is a good case to be made of dead animals or dead individuals themselves being capable of having rights.
Well, I mean,
do you agree?
I mean, it's with the production of these products is the issue, because it kills live animals. It's not even a byproduct; it's a co-product. So like, people actually buying leather new is unethical. If you're talking about people being scared away from veganism itself, I think people are scared of veganism. That doesn't mean that necessarily make veganism bad or anything. If you want to say like, look, you don't have to throw away your old leather products. That's true. Like, even Gary Yourofsky, like vegan level 1 million, like, makes that argument. If you mean that like it's not immoral for people to buy leather, no, I think that misses the point of veganism entirely.
No, I completely agree. I think that by contributing to the supply chain is the immoral part of it. So that when you buy it used, then that wouldn't be a problem, probably.
Yeah, like as you say, like secondhand or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would even make the case that buying a new pair of shoes made of plastics, wherein the production of said product is harmful to the environment, is more harmful to the individuals than wearing the leather itself, because you're supporting an industry. But anyway,
I mean, maybe. I mean, like, there is one thing to be said, like, in terms of the secondhand industry, like, if you were to have people like scalping and stuff like that. So like, if there was a massive demand in secondhand leather, because everyone's like, oh, I'll just buy secondhand instead, and then this demand was causing people to purchase leather products and sell them on secondhand stores, then you're just going to find that the demand hasn't actually diminished, it's just been moved, and that would be the only real risk. It's like, when people scalp tickets or something like that, it's like, the price of tickets is low enough so that they can sell it in a different market for a higher price, and then that's when the market equilibrium needs to be essentially the demise of the demand for leather. I don't think there's anything wrong with people buying secondhand leather necessarily, but ultimately, if we were to see like a massive demand in secondhand leather, and this was leading to people scalping leather from the and then selling it secondhand and so on, like, to try and say like, look, it's secondhand, to make a profit, which I think would be possible, then we need to consider whether buying any leather at all is unethical.
Yeah, I concur, actually. But what the arguments of the people who are against this position have made is something like, even a dead individual would have an interest in not being used as a skin, right? Let's say pigs had the capacity to understand that you're using their friend as a coat, right? You would maybe have some kind of harm to your or to their well-being. Do you not think that's a reasonable argument?
I've heard this before. I remember doing this in the Philosophy of Death at master's degree. Like, can you harm a dead individual? I don't think you can. I think you can harm. I think you could be disrespectful to that individual. And the disrespect would be in purchasing and continuing this exploitative behavior. It wouldn't be in using that skin. It's like, you could you could do it for the same motivation. You could be using this product for the sake of not harming other animals, like producing more essentially producing what's it called, like an environmental issue which harms animals. In which case you could make the absolute opposite position, couldn't you? You could say, in not using the product, you are disrespecting the memory of the individual. You are essentially making their life and their death not have any value. And it's like you could say that in their death, in this scenario, you are, having come to this enlightenment, you are using their death is now becoming a more meaningful experience. It's become more valuable than allowing it to be essentially purposeless. But yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I don't think that dead individuals have interests beyond the understanding of the subjectivity itself. And so we consider everyone, those who are alive primarily.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, I think. The counter argument I would make when it comes to the people thinking that it's inherently wrong to use someone who's dead is that a lot of people actually bury their family members without them having some kind of consenting to being rotting in the ground. And even some people making rings out of their family members, and I would think that that's parallel to wearing someone as a jacket or shoes, right?
People make rings out of them family members. That's kind of fucking creepy. But I mean, like,
you kind of you take their ashes and you carbon, you press it so that the carbon is so tight that.
Okay, that's less offensive to us. That's I had like some sort of like horrible like skin ring in my head. I'm like, this is sick.
Yeah, but do you think it's immoral though?
No, it's not immoral. Like the Scandinavian, like not Scandinavians, the Polynesians or whatever, Polynesian tribes used to eat each other. So, like, I don't think it's unethical.
Probably the Scandinavians too. I'm Norwegian, so.
Well, I think I don't think there's anything unethical about it. I mean, death rituals. I think I actually had an interview with a really interesting guys. Lost the interview, unfortunately, and I felt so bad because I interviewed them for over an hour. And what they do is they preserve people's tattoos after they die. So they take the piece of skin with the tattoo on, essentially treat it, preserve it, put it in a frame for that individual's family, so that it I just see that as an evolution of death rituals. They're not harming them. The individual very well want that artwork to stay on after they die as an expression of their tastes and identity, and depending on what people might start getting art to have preserved. So like you could get like a back piece which is like chronicling things that you thought were important in your life, preserving certain virtues and values you wish to pass down to your ancestors, descendants, and that might be genuinely what you want to do. I don't think there's any issue with that, not at all. It's not about use. If we talk about use, like, I think that people don't realize it. Like, it's about being treated as an object, about being not considered, rather than about being rather like it's about like it's a separation between something like exploitation and consideration. That's what we really mean when we say like you used someone. You don't really mean like, all right, you participated in some sort of interaction for your own benefit at all, because then every interaction we'll have with everyone is going to be of some sort of exploitative nature. That's not what we mean. We mean you didn't consider their interests alike to your own. Now, if someone's dead and they don't have any, like they can't feel pain and pleasure and so on like that, then you can't really disrespect them beyond, their memory, if you're not respecting their memory and their identity. So for example, like if you were to, I don't know, like desecrate someone's grave, we would see that as being disrespectful. And I would say that you are producing in an environment which harms the subjectivity of the individuals, because they partake in the subjectivity of society, and we would see that as damaging the memory and how we engage with death itself. It would be an issue societally, but just essentially so for example, I don't see someone like if they use my body to save someone's life, like my kidneys or something, when I die to save someone's life, great, you're respecting my memory. You're perpetuating the values that I've stood for my entire life, which is the consideration of sentient beings. So it's not just about use, it's about consideration.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for the clarifications and your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, man. Take it easy. Right.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hey, good, man. I'm a mod here. Just wanted to first say thanks for coming by. This is awesome. Big fan. I apologize if. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just had to. I just removed someone off stage. I'll bring you up right after this one. Sorry. I'll bring you right up after.
Oh. Okay.
All right. How you doing?
Wait, did you say that he was gonna remove me for?
No, someone else that just.
No. The other person that I removed, I said that I'll bring him up after.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
sorry. Just restart over. Just
right.
do
Yeah.
everything
Okay.
you-
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, I'm a mod here. Just wanted to say thanks for doing what you do. Big fan, etc. And I apologize if this is already something that you've talked about at all. I kind of came in a little bit late because I was preoccupied, but I digress. I know that you have a lot of your content has a lot of emphasis on socialism and veganism, and things surrounding those. And I know that specifically non-vegan leftists can be somewhat of a meme in a lot of vegan communities.
Absolutely.
So I was
100%.
I was wondering, like, personally, your take on veganism and anti-speciesism and leftism and how all of these things intertwine and what your thoughts are on all of these things.
Well,
feel free to talk as much or as little as you want. I'm just gonna hop out of this and let you chat now. Just talk your heart out. So I just want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, no problem. I take it is a bit of a meme when I hear about non-vegan leftists. I think that the overall consideration of the left, at least what it should be anyway, is the consideration of a broader group. Like if you take the right and for example, the far right to be something like fascism, which is considering in and out groups, and like there is me and that is valuable, whilst not me is not valuable. And as you move towards the left, it becomes a movement towards, let's say, the communist kind of like Marxist position, which would be like the stateless, classless society. The consideration of ethics is no longer dependent upon an individual's identity, but rather, or at least to the broader sense, it's the consideration of them as an individual themselves, just as being a subjective agent or a subject. I think that overall the consideration of leftists should be to reflect the values of all conscious sentient creatures, all sensitive beings. And I think that if we were to make an argument for that, it ultimately usually depends upon some sort of anthropocentric conception, which is self-justifying, ironically, dialectically conservative. Like trying to conserve our current understanding of ethical value rather than trying to alleviate conflictions within the system of drives from which people like Marx and Hegel would argue for. So I don't know. I think it is a bit of a meme when I see non-vegan leftists. I think you've got to be just a bit like, I don't know, like selfish, self-orientated to be a leftist and think that you shouldn't consider all sentient beings and instead only consider humans. The biggest thing I hear is usually not that they don't consider animals, but that I have more important things to worry about. People are in pain. Why do you give to animal charities rather than human charities and stuff? And I think ultimately it's just the expression of the anthropocentric morality of our time just coming out through them. But yeah, it's just an absolute meme. I don't see it as having any real driving force. I don't think that it's got any foundation. I think the worst part is it's usually counteractive to the ethic, which is equality. I would argue, when this is what I'm actually arguing in my PhD, that what veganism is the absolute expression of equality. The understanding of equality being taken to be interests, the interests of sentient beings, dialectically considered. So, am I considering the interest of a particular group? Am I like, for example, men and not women? That would be unequal. It would be unjustifiable. And we would agree with that in society. We've come to that point where we realize, like, sexism is unjustified. Patriarchy is unjustified. Same with racism. That, we must give civil rights to other races. It's unethical to create a distinction between individuals in terms of consideration, based on something like the melanin content in the individual's skin. And same thing with religion and, disability and so on. And veganism is just the final step to realize that what we are considering in this situation isn't any unfounded or ungrounded attribute. Let's say intelligence, race, sex, whatever it may be, but rather the experiences within that agent. I think Jeremy Bentham said it best when he said, what is it that should trace the inseparable line? Is it the faculty of reason, or perhaps the faculty of discourse? But a full-grown horse or dog is by far a more rational and communicable animal than an infant of a day, a week, or even a month old. And if it weren't, what would it avail? The question is not, can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? The reality of the situation is that the ethical foundation, the foundation of ethics itself, is the experiential value of goodness, of badness, of positive or negative within the phenomenal experience of minds. Animals have minds. Animals feel pain and pleasure just like you and me. We should consider animals. Otherwise, we are being prejudicial and speciesist. So yeah, I hope that explains my point of why I think non-vegan leftists are a meme. So yeah, Mohammed, come on down.
Hello there. Can you hear me fine?
I can hear you, man. How you doing?
Okay, hi. This sounds a bit off topic, but I'll get to the question in a minute. But what philosophy, is it a good field to go into?
It depends on what you want to do. And it depends on what you mean by good.
like good wage, you meet good people, if you understand what I mean. You know the gist.
Well, if I'm honest, good wage. Well, like it depends. Like, it's not about so if you wanted to go in academia and study philosophy, then you well, it's unbelievably competitive and horrible. If you're planning on, just getting any degree in the humanities and then going from that position on to essentially become a manager or whatever, then philosophy is as high paying as history. It's like the most high paying humanity. If you're looking to actually make money in general, don't do a humanity. Do a trade. Do something like a STEM subject and you get paid more. If you want to become self-employed and you want to become, get into business, then you can do philosophy without going to university. You can do philosophy online. You can buy my course. you don't necessarily need the qualification and the degree in anyways. So, like in terms of the whether philosophy, you can meet I don't know, you can meet good people in philosophy, you can meet bad people in philosophy. That's just the luck of the draw. Same with anything else. You probably meet people that are more willing to question themselves, but I've also met a lot of dogmatic and narrow-minded people during philosophy as well. So honestly, it's hit or miss.
Well, of course. Are you a vegan yourself?
I am a vegan myself, yes.
So do you how do you say it? Do you source how do you source your clothes? Because a lot of clothes use animal products.
Honestly, it's really easy to find vegan products most of the time, even from big stores and stuff like that. I don't really buy clothes very often. I really don't buy clothes very often. I'm not like a fashionista kind of person, you know.
Yeah, of course.
I do like second-hand clothing, if I'm honest, because I like the environmental impact. I think it's good for the environment. I think that we'll consume too much and that sort of thing. And I can get higher quality stuff for cheaper. So I don't really see the point in buying. I think I don't know. I really hate people who buy polo shirts with a stupid little label on that says Fred Perry or something, and it's 70 quid, and it's just the same as a polo shirt without the stupid little label on. That was a tenner. And I just think that's just, I don't know, it just screams stupidity to me. That's my personal taste in that. In terms of how I just source my clothes, you can source your clothes from literally anywhere, mate. You can find some clothes stores are more friendly than others, but where you can get vegan
Nike
clothes.
friendly? Is Nike friendly with their clothes or?
Nike, yeah,
Adidas?
Nike. You can get loads of vegan it's Nike stuff. I think I'm trying to think of it depends. Some of their shoes on you'd have to check individually, but it's not hard. You can go on the websites and stuff, and they'll tell you what materials are used. It's not hard at all. I've owned a pair of vegan Nikes. I think Nikes.
I'm going to be buying a dog soon, and because I'm hopefully going to become a vegan, what would you advise me feeding the dog if I'm going to be a vegan?
Yeah, no problem. That's actually really easy. Dogs are really easy. If you had said cat, I would have really struggled. But dogs, do you live in the UK?
Yes.
Yeah. So in the UK, you can get V-Dog and Benevo. I feed my dog Benevo. He likes that. He's been vegan on that food for 3 years plus, longer. Because I didn't realize dogs could go vegan. But yeah, really no problem feeding dogs vegan. Really no problem.
But won't the dog hate me?
No, man, no. My dog absolutely he didn't his life didn't become terrible or anything. He didn't. I don't think he even noticed. Beyond he liked he hates dry food in general. It doesn't whether it's vegan or not vegan. He just doesn't like it very much. If I give him vegan wet food versus non-vegan dry food, he preferred the vegan wet food. My dog really likes you can get these sweet potato treats and stuff, but he really likes the Benevo ocean treats. He really likes those. He loves beans. He gets excited anytime I open a tin of beans. He runs to us for beans. Dogs are opportunistic, and they don't really mind. Dogs I don't know if you've ever had a packet of crisps or something, and your dog will sit there and ask for a crisp and stuff like that. They're not things that you've fed your dog. You've probably fed dogs not vegan things as treats without even realizing they're vegan. Dogs love peanut butter, for example. A lot of dogs like peanut butter and stuff. You can get vegan dog treats all the time. They're really easy. It's really easy to feed a dog vegan, and dogs can live a happy, healthy life on being vegan.
This sounds a bit silly, but can dogs be homosexuals? Because I've got 2 dogs right now, and
well,
it sounds silly. It sounds quite stupid.
Well, yeah, I don't think that to be entirely honest with you, I don't think that the concept of sexuality in terms of things like dogs or anything like that makes sense. To be on a more philosophical level, I think that when we talk about sexuality, what we're talking about is an identity and a way of expressing ourselves. For example, I think humans can be homosexual, they can be heterosexual, and these are norms and conventions and ways of sublimating our desires in our society. When dogs engage in sexual activity, it's not that they're heterosexual or homosexual. They're just being sexual. They're just following their instinctual drives, and that can lead them to having sex with like either male or female, like of the same sex or not. I don't think it's as I don't think it's a real I don't think homosexuality in dogs is the same thing as homosexuality. It's just like same sex intercourse between dogs. But yeah. So next person. I'm not gonna lie, Pablo. I'm not gonna trust anyone with a troll face on that profile. So I'm just gonna go past you. Sora. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm actually doing good. How about you?
I'm pretty good. So.
I just want to ask you a quick question.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Do you like tulips?
Tulips. Oh god, damn. All right. They just kick them like straight away. Probably wise.
I think we have gone into more the troll side now. I was trying to look at the question I had written down, but I think we've already been going for like 2 hours almost. This is great. Really appreciate it so far. I don't know for how long you still want to go, but yeah, no, this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's no problem. I don't mind ending it there. Unless there's anyone that like really has a question or anything like that from the server. I think Lost has one there, so I'll take Lost as the last one, and we can end it there.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
they've gone.
sure.
They've gone. It's okay, Lost. I said I'd take you as the last question. You can ask a question. It's okay. I think Bentham. I think I've seen him before. Bentham. Bentham. I think you're on my server. I think he's on my server.
Yeah, their name is a little inappropriate. If you change your name, we might. If you could change your name, that'd be great. Who else did you want to bring up?
I think there was someone called Lost something, but like I think they dropped out, so they mustn't have been interested. So, but I understand it there. I don't mind.
Well, I don't mind the inappropriate names, so.
Okay, well, I'll just it's Snow. I know Snow. I'll accept Snow. And I'll accept you in a second, Bentham. Well done. Thanks for changing your name. Hi, Snow.
They're definitely. Oh, there we go.
How you doing? Hello?
We can't hear you.
No, I can't hear you, man.
Well, Bentham changed their name, so I guess we'll bring them on. You are able to join.
I think after this.
On the top should be a green bar.
After this, guys, I'm probably gonna.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was already speaking.
That's cool, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I just want to, first of all, thank you for all the content that you make. You actually inspired me to go vegan about a couple months ago, and I'm sticking with it. It's going great.
Great to hear.
So, just that's fantastic. I have a question for you. This will actually probably end up being like a lengthy answer. So, if you'd rather just like finish up things pretty quickly, then I would rather not have to like go through this whole question.
Don't worry about it, man.
But if you're willing, okay. So there's a fellow that I know on the DGG Discord, the Philosophy channel. Shouts out to the Philosophy channel there.
Yeah, that's
and
cool, man.
He argues.
Sorry, continue.
He argues that a prerequisite for moral consideration, and really for like he values suffering, of course. So he thinks that a prerequisite for suffering is self-awareness.
Yeah, high order theories of consciousness.
And he argues that that's necessary for it. And he thinks that certain animals, he goes so far as to say animals like chickens. I wouldn't agree with him on that, like empirically, but like certainly animals like invertebrates and like insects and cold-blooded like non-mammals that those animals, since they don't have a conception of the self, they aren't able to experience suffering, and because of that, they don't deserve any sort of moral consideration. What would be your response to that sort of argument?
I mean, I guess it depends on the position that he's coming from a little bit more. For example, why he believes that self-consciousness allows for the experience of suffering. So, like, there's a few arguments. There's people like Leahy, who argues that from a Wittgensteinian perspective, that, you know, self-awareness essentially allows for, without the self, there is no unity within our experience at all. So there is no actual locus point for the experience to be given meaning. Now, I think I've got an argument against that one. In terms of higher order theories of consciousness, he may be arguing that simply you're not conscious at all. Conscious at all, unless you're self-aware. That's like higher order theories of consciousness, which are very unpopular actually. Then we're gonna go through that one. So I guess this is the thing. I'd say the first one with higher order theories of consciousness, I'd say that self-awareness and self-consciousness are only possible because of consciousness itself. Otherwise, the content would not exist. For example, the development of identity and self-awareness would be impossible if there wasn't any semantic content from which the significations of self and self-awareness were actually created. So, for example, unless I can't be aware of something that doesn't exist. You know, the awareness itself would have to be a productive activity, and I don't think we've got any evidence of that. There's no evidence to say that animals do not have experiential values. It's just I would say it's unfounded. It's like saying that they'd have to make either an argument about complexity, that for example the complexity of our existence, maybe from a Kantian position, wouldn't have certain essential attributes applied to it. But then these attributes don't seem to be applied from our concepts of self, but prior to our concepts of self. So this is like space, time, causation. And even then, you could have a disembodied or a disunified experience. It doesn't have to be necessarily unified. It just wouldn't be understandable. You would experience it. You'd have the value. You just wouldn't necessarily be able to investigate it, which is, I think, really it would be absurd. You wouldn't know what was doing anything to you, and there would be no such thing as quote unquote you, as a separation between yourself and your environment. But looking at animals, they do already apply these concepts to their environment, inherently. If you look if you look at animals in general, they're able to engage in a three-dimensional plane, problem solve to certain variable degrees. All of them have the capacity to essentially interact with food sources, water sources, and so on like that. So there's no reason to think that those essential concepts are not applied. And even if they weren't applied, it doesn't necessitate that they wouldn't have an experiential value. So the main argument against this really is that even if the the unity of apperception allows for an understanding of our experience, the thing being understood is ontologically separate from the understanding itself. That the production of self-awareness doesn't create and construct the values, it only makes them ordered and understandable, which is an epistemological position rather than an ontological position. I just got a horrible pain there. I don't know why. I think the next position in terms of the Wittgensteinian argument. So this is probably one of the most popular ones. The individual's self-consciousness allows them to essentially have a reference point from which to associate with certain experiences. I would say that produces the experience. I would say I would dismiss the Wittgensteinian argument that the limits of language is the limits of our world, because I would say that the semantic content of our concepts must have the possibility of obtaining reality, otherwise it would not function or the syntax of the grammar would not function. This is an argument essentially given by Robert Brandom, and he argues for a form of pragmatism from this, and he relates that once again to animals as well. He says that essentially without this, we wouldn't be able to understand how problem solving and truth finding is progressing from, for example, an animal like a fish, like that fish that uses a stone as a tool, all the way up to, you know, Homo sapiens using, you know, quantum mechanics as a problem solving technique. It ultimately relates to an act of will, and the self-awareness of that will is again an epistemological endeavor, a pursuit of truth, which is a form of equipment used by individuals rather than a productive endeavor. I've never found a good argument to say that there is the value of that the value of our experience is ontologically produced, or could be ontologically produced, by a notion of self-awareness, rather that it's only ordered and becomes understandable because of this, you know, epistemological endeavor, this conceptual endeavor. But yeah, I mean, if you want, reach out to him, ask him to debate us, tell us to send him some sources, and I'll begin to have a conversation with him.
Oh yeah, like I've told him that that might be really, really productive to like reach out to you, like go to your Discord server. He's not that familiar with your content. He only saw your content when you were debating a guy from our server, Sind, a while back.
I'm debating Sind again as well, so.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Anyway, thank you so much for answering the question and for doing this AMA and for doing your content in general.
Oh, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Have a nice day, mate.
You too.
Okay, I'll accept these last two people, and then that's it. Okay, I'm just being nice yet, but I'm gonna bounce after these last two.
Oh wait, we're doing more?
There's two people there, and they're from the server, so I just thought I'd be polite. I don't know. You can, if you want to call it. I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
No. If you want to continue, that's fine. I'm just I don't want to burn you out. But okay, then last two then.
Yeah, last two real quick, guys. So Lost Europe. Tony, I'm sorry you're gonna pull out. I'm gonna get rid of you. Bye. Sorry, Tony. Lost? No.
I think some other vegans might want to take over the stage
they
after you. They
absolutely
might want to continue stage. So if anyone wants to stay, we might have someone else continue doing the stage. But yeah, I guess Mystic is the last person.
Yeah, Mystic. Hello.
Oh, hi there. How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. How's it going for you?
Pretty much nothing. I was just listening to the conversations, the debate, and all. So yeah, but one thing which I really want to address, like what people think, like vegan is all about being, like change your eating habit. It means like if you're gonna turn vegan, you should not supposed to harm any animals. But it's not only just limited to eating habit. It also actually being not to harm other animals, like as per your lifestyle. For example, some people like some brands and everything, like these sort of stuff. And these people and these brands actually just kill the animals, hunt the animals to grab their skins and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, like what I'm trying to say, vegan is not all about changing your eating habit. It's all about changing your lifestyle. So, yeah.
I completely agree. I mean, the Vegan Society defines it as a philosophy and a way of living which seeks to exclude as far as possible and practicable all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals for food. For food, clothing, and other purposes, and so on. And it's for the benefit of animals, humans, and the environment. And I think that sums it up. I think, like in terms of where like how we live vegan. A vegan's not just someone who eats a plant-based diet and then goes and kicks dogs. A vegan can't be a Nazi or something like that. Veganism is a form of sentientism. It's the consideration of all animals and their interests. So yeah, I completely agree with that. And you know, in terms of brands, I think that I would look at it more of a product by product basis than a brand, because I don't want to say that vegans necessarily have to go to war with big corporations, because that'll only create non-vegan propaganda, you know, as the corporations essentially try to sustain themselves and prevent the growth of veganism. You know, there's no sense of making an enemy when you can make an ally. If you can make a corporation go vegan by choosing a vegan option rather than a non-vegan option, then yeah, that's absolutely fine. So if McDonald's brings out a vegan option, buy the vegan one, don't buy the non-vegan one, and McDonald's will slowly but surely convert its non-vegan production to vegan production to maximize its profits. But yeah, that's I completely agree with you. Otherwise, yeah. Is that yeah?
Your perspective. Sorry, I was told you may have already answered this. I joined late, so sorry if this is a little bit redundant. But
oh, hello.
It seems B12 really wants to ask a question. I'm not sure if you.
Yeah, go for it.
It's up to you. If you're
no,
busy.
No, go for it, man. It's all right.
Okay, yeah. So I was just gonna ask if your position has changed at all on the whole name the trait syllogism thing.
Like, it depends on what you mean by positions changed. I mean, positions always been the same. Like, I think that I argued like that. Ask yourselves original interpretations, and you know this. He says that his interpretation didn't change. I think it did, but you know, in the way that he's interpreting it now, there's no issues. It's just a modal marginal cases. It's not unsound. It's not invalid. There's no issues. In terms of the interpretations that I've addressed prior, you know, with it breaking Leibniz's law and so on like that. If you take those, like the strong name the trait, which I said was possible, it breaks Leibniz's law, but I don't think that he interprets it in that way now. So with the way he's interpreting it now, I have no problems. But in the way that he has interpreted it in the past, there was major issues.
The syllogism, though, has still stayed the same, like the whole, you know, all the premises and the conclusion has stayed the same.
Yeah, it stayed the same, but like it's in terms of the way in which the trait equalization and how that was to be understood. So like the words haven't changed, but the meaning behind the words. So if I talk about trait equalization as a being actually becoming, so for example, there would exist a point in which, let's say the identity like of a human becomes the identity of a cow, and that is totally trait equalized. If it was actually trait equalized, in which you would have a point in which an individual is supposed to be and not be a cow, that would be breaking Leibniz's law, which is what I made a video about. But if you accept that trait equalization is not actually the transformation of an individual into another individual, whilst containing all of the same like characteristics or moral characteristics, then it becomes essentially modal marginal cases. Each different instance or world that is proposed is its own world, separate, not sharing an identity with the original proposed being, you know, given human, any given human and any given animal. They remain distinct, in which case the individual is not contradictory. If they say if they come out of it and say they find that they don't value anything but the human through like the first world all the way through, or that they value like up to a certain point, so this kind of shows like an issue with his dialogue tree and the flow tree more than anything, and the way that it used to be interpreted, because it used to be like you come out with a contradiction, you're either in contradiction or you're absurd, and that was the only way you could run through name the trait. And if you look at the old dialogue tree, that's, I don't know if it's still like that, but that's the way it flowed. But in the new interpretation, I would take it as a new interpretation, or like the weak interpretation, in which we discussed, there's no issues there, because you'd say, right, well, look, you aren't contradicting yourself and not valuing the cow, if you said that you don't value the cow, and the cow was never the human, ever. Like, this isn't a person who's changed into a cow. This is a cow. It's just a cow, and that's a human, and they're never the same. So it depends on how you interpret the trait equalization process, and his movement on that is basically to say that it's a proposed separate entities and ideations of being which have traits removed along the line until they eventually form, let's say an animal. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, I have a few thoughts on that, but I'll just ask my last question and let you go. So, are you still of the position that Ask Yourself is a non-cognitivist?
I think he's a quasi-realist. Last time I spoke to him, but like, I don't know what he thinks now. I haven't spoken to him on ethics for a long time, so I think we might be having a discussion sometime in the near future. But I'm gonna I don't know if he's basically I have an issue with subjectivism as well, which I mentioned earlier, where I think subjectivism, unless it can be grounded in let's say external behaviors or something like some form of behaviorism, then it's relating to private states of being which are inaccessible to other individuals, and so these attitudes and behaviors are essentially formed from Humean passions, like Humean motivators, in which case there's no sense in saying that you can have knowledge of them or change them or propose them. They are chosen for you. It is determinate. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Perspective. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is it. I think someone might want to take over. I'm not sure. We'll see what's happened. But this is this was epic. I'm really thankful, and I don't know if you still want to say something, but and maybe perhaps we could do this another time in the future if you thought it was productive and you enjoyed it, or I don't know. Who knows what's in the future? But yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
I really appreciate
I'm
this.
game to do it again in the future, and thanks for hosting us. And if anyone's interested in seeing me channel or anything or any content I make, it's Perspective Philosophy at YouTube. Consider subscribing, all that good stuff. Yeah, that's really it. Thanks for having us. Thanks for everyone.
Yeah.
For
Also, if I
questions.
might say one thing as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone enjoyed what was happening here, we are an animal rights server. So if you want to talk to vegans or if you want to hang out with other vegans, be sure to join.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll post the link in the description as well for the server, but it's already in the chat. It's pinned in the chat. So if anyone from the chat wants to go and talk to some animal rights advocates, then go and pop on by. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. See you later. Thank you.
Right, take
Bye.
it easy, man. Bye.
Yeah.
I think I kept the stage up there. I hope I didn't close the stage for them. I think I exited without ending the stage. Yeah, it's still going. Sweet. Okay. So, James Heller super chatted $5, says, why are you a minarchist? Is there some reason why you think we need a centralized justice system? Yeah, I would take the Lockean position on that an individual is incapable of essentially judging the adequacy of punishments or what's the word? Incapable of being objective about punishment and its usage in terms of individually. So if I'm trying to put this in it. So for example, he gives the example. So let's say someone steals something. Someone might say cut their hands off. Someone might say give them a good talking to. Now, what is the right thing to do in that scenario? Well, Locke thinks that individuals are not going to be able to be non-biased in that scenario. But more than that, I would say that the laws themselves are constructions of universals in which individuals actually engage with them and analyze whether the laws are justified or unjustified, and whether the application of the law is justified or unjustified given the circumstances in which they were involved. And so what we need is a justice system which removes the subjectivity, the particularity or the individuality of the of the scenario and applies the law without it, but sorry, not the scenario, removes the particularity of the judge to a group of individuals, a jury, so that they can see whether this law was will be applied properly, whether it has been broken or not, and then also consider the circumstances from which the individual was in, and whether this would have created a conflict within society, and whether it is a societal issue or an issue in terms of the application of law, whether they have been lawful in their engagement. And I don't think you can rely upon individuals for that, but I would also say that the actual laws themselves are constructions of institutions and are expressions of subjectivity itself within our society, not a given individual's conception of justice, but are the entirety, the totality of justice itself. So I hope that explains why I would argue for a state, essentially. Let's see if I can just turn this up, because I think that's a bit... I'm trying to do this. I think that's totally jammed. Okay, never mind. Oh, I'm not trying that again. PP is a sophist. Abandon your objectivity morals. What makes something objective? Being independent of any given mind. Right. So, I was thinking about playing some. I got a new game, guys. I don't know if you are interested. But I'm actually going to change the name of the stream as well. I don't know if you are interested in seeing us play this game. There's someone's having issues on the server. Essentially, I have no idea why that's not working. Okay. Right, anyway, so I'm going to see about playing Sekiro. Does anyone want to see us play Sekiro? Because I've never played a Dark Souls game properly, man. So this would be like a totally new experience for me. Oh, your headset broke when you tried to talk. Sorry, Snow. Unlucky, man. That's proper unlucky. Yes, okay. Cool. I will play Sekiro. I've never played this before, so you're gonna have to bear with us. I'm gonna suck so bad. This is like a Dark Souls game, right? Like, isn't it hard as shit? It's gonna be like hard as fuck. Yes, play it, yes. I don't know if I can do this, man. I think embarrass myself. I should just play League of Legends and suck at that. I know I'm bad at that. I need to record as well. I need to do so much tonight, but I think I'll play like a half hour, an hour or something. Isn't the alert box working, by the way? Like, people's like super chats and stuff aren't like being read out, and I don't like that. Let's try it.
John donated £85. This is a test donation for £85.
Thanks, John. Non-existent John. Have you ever played Battletoads? Oh, don't you bring back the old memes. Have you ever played Tadpole Warriors? There's like people like ringing GameStop. Stop. Like, have you got Battletoads? Battletoads in stock? What would I say to people who are vegan in every way apart from the fact that they play sports that use kill animals for equipment such as cricket?